Sup fellow nerds, it's good to see you. Last night saw the airing of the penultimate episode of Doctor Who Flux, Survivors of the Flux. Meager title, but we do get to find out more about the elusive Division. No, the stupid YouTuber, do you even watch Doctor Who? So, this was an episode with 4 and a bit narratives to keep up with. 1. The Doctor, face to face with this bitch again. 2. Yaz, Dan and Jericho romping about the 20th century doing whatever it is they're doing. 3. The Grand Serpent infiltrating UNIT from the get-go. And 4, and a bit, Belle and Vinder's bit. Lumping Belle and Vinder's bit together because they kind of almost meet and they sort of riff off each other and yeah, so far, so Chibnall. Anyway, let's get into this one. So the Doctor is on the Division's super duper void station thing, I guess, and hands up, how many of you saw this coming? According to social media over the last few weeks, quite a lot of you. Came as absolutely no surprise that this woman, who was introduced in Chapter 3 to give Chapter 3 some semblance of an episode that has something important within, was Tech Tayoon. Surprise! Mum's home. She all but confirms that the whole timeless child stuff was true and nuking the universe and moving on was indeed the plan. Division is simple and indescribable. Wrote yourself into a corner when trying to explain that one, eh, Chris? It began on Gallifrey as a splinter group of people using Time Lord technology to shape events and grow because they have been present the whole time, apparently, and now that we finally got to the point where we can answer those nitty-gritty questions about the Division, it's been revealed who they really are. An incredibly flimsy enemy to be the biggest enemy the Doctor has ever faced. And honestly, not all that much else. Now, I've said it before and I will say it again. I genuinely think this is Chris Chibnall scarring his name into the flesh of Doctor Who like he's Dolores fucking Umbridge giving detention simply because he wants to leave his mark. First, we had him establish a further backstory to the Doctor we never even wanted, and now we're on the brink of the Whoniverse we know being wiped from existence. And I'm not going to be all that surprised if he actually does at this point. The Doctor has sown the seeds of getting everything back while monologuing with the Ood, but I think it could happen that these next specials and Russell Round 2 onwards will take place in Universe 2. Not saying that it will, but with the amount of stuff we've had to just go along with over the last 3 odd years, it's not entirely out of the question. As for reading into a bit more of moving on into a whole new universe, I feel like we're retreading something we've seen before. Remember that scene in Revolution of the Daleks when the Doctor and Ryan sat down and there was the whole scene about her being, the same person, though something's changed, but we should all just, rally behind her because she's still the Doctor at the end of the day. It felt like the same thing was happening here with the discussion of moving from one universe to the next. Either we can live in the past and just fucking die with it, Universe 1, or accept the memories of the past that did happen to the Doctor and move on into Universe 2, or the future of the show. As a critic of Who in the past, Chris seems to feel like he knows what's best for Doctor Who, irrelevant to whether some people don't agree with him. The Timeless Child arc was very much him swinging his dick around for all to see, and apparently there's no ramifications for that if you're involved in Doctor Who. Yes, I just made that joke. The Doctor attempting to reason with an Ood was very much in vain since, I guess, being a slave race and serving Division wouldn't give half a deep-fried shit about his kin being demolished by the Flux. He still obliges and shows the Doctor what is going on, but to what avail, really? Like, yes, it's centred on the Earth, but it's Doctor Who, of course it's centred on the Earth, that's just how it is. Anyway, Tech Tayoon dies, and the Doctor's next, and that's the cliffhanger. That, along with what I said about the Ood, aren't going to score minus points this week, but being the penultimate episode of the series and going into the finale, I expected way more of a cliffhanger than that. Maybe a big reveal or something, just something much more exciting. Not to say I'm not excited, we'll get to that, but I just expected more. Not going to score minus points, but I just had to get that opinion out. Finally, on this stuff regarding this episode, how is all of this going to tie into the multi-universal parallel world stuff we've already known? Go back to Series 2 where parallel universes were the hashtag thing, and we know they were closed off by the Time Lords etc, and travelling between them now isn't the best idea. This is sort of Time Lord tech we're dealing with, but probably not the best thing to dwell on right now, but keep it in mind, I guess. Now, something that at first didn't make all that much sense is why the Grand Serpent is suddenly back in the game. I thought he was a relatively throwaway character introduced solely for Vinder's backstory, but hey. Infiltrating UNIT from its inception is a pretty cool take, to be honest, and I thought this was going to splinter off into a different timeline of Unit, because I thought maybe the whole Flux thing is a different universe, like people have been theorising since the time as child. But anyway, no, apparently not. He has been there in the darkness this whole time, ready to help the Santarans. Yep, I was pretty certain we weren't entirely rid of them after chapter 2, so I'm definitely excited to see more of our baked potato pricks up to their old tricks. They must be desperate for revenge if they're calling in outside help, but more on that next week. Also, nice callback to the War Machines there. Wasn't expecting that. And also a much more tasteful homage to our dear Brigadier. Just a nice archive recording from behind a door. They didn't try and recast him or CGI a face like Star Wars do. He's just kind of there behind a door. Far more tasteful than digging him up and turning into a Cyberman. Moffat! Obviously, we were all also stoked to see Kate back as well as Unit as a whole, and I'm loving the fact that she saw straight through the Grand Serpent. Definitely felt like something she'd do. Although, I was actually concerned that Chris was going to kill her off at this point, and do you know what? Chris's narrative choices, as said, haven't landed all that well with people, but he's gotten away with a lot. But that? Oh, he would not survive a single second if he kills off Kate Stewart. If she dies next week, I'm coming for you. But hell yeah, she's leading the human resistance next week. Thirdly, it's great to see Jericho doddering about with Yaz and Dan, though their whole thing this week very much leaned into more comic relief than I think I'd liked it to. It's odd seeing Dan and Jericho act as some weird comedic double act as they enter that tomb in Mexico, I think. But Yaz was admittedly much more of an authority figure like, we'd expect her to be, because guess what? She's a police officer. And the whole here's the plan if we're separated hologram felt a little bit too convenient. Obviously the date they're looking for is December 5th, 2021, since that's when the finale airs, and I'm getting the whole base code of the universe vibes from this, and I thought that was kind of done back in 2010 too. The scene with this guy delivered some genuine laughs, but it still felt weirdly out of place, and I'm intrigued to see how Carvinista's going to save Dan if he doesn't actually have time travel. Yet. If the Doctor comes back to help defend the Earth, which I'm sure she will. But suddenly they meet Liverpool 1820 again, and he finally explains what's going on. They head to Liverpool and find him still lurking the tunnels after his death. Doorways are opening within the tunnels, linking them to strange places and times, and it's all because of the Flux. It's nice to know that we finally got context as to why Joseph Williamson keeps cropping up. But what if this whole Yaz, Dan, Jericho finding a pot and then the date and etc, etc, etc being chased down by the Grand Serpent is just going to stop with Mr. Williamson rocking up? Because it feels like they're being dragged off into a different thing, and the events with him are going to lead back into the Doctor coming back or something, because all these tunnels are being affected by the Flux. Is this date eventually going to be relevant, or is that going to get left behind? I don't think it will, because it took up, 2/3, 3/4 of an episode, but it did kind of feel like all of that stuff is now kind of irrelevant. New lead. We're going with this guy into the weird tunnels under Liverpool. But yes, there are these doors, but don't go through door number 9. There are death rays in there. I immediately think of Daleks with death ray and yeah, I'm game. And of course, next week we're obviously going to go through door number 9. Why would have it been mentioned in the first place? This is very much that's the old tunnel to Ravenholm. We don't go there anymore. And obviously, Gordon goes down the tunnel to Ravenholm. Extra nerd points if you know what I'm talking about. And since we love numbers to foreshadow stuff in Doctor Who, what's behind door number 9? Well, it's Christopher fucking Eccleston. He's back. He's quashed any rumours of wanting to come back to Doctor Who because he said he had a bad time, but no, here he is. He's behind door number 9. Chris got him back, and because of that, I'm going to just wipe the record clean of all the bad things I said about Chris because he brought back my Doctor. Yeah, I'm kidding. That's not going to happen, is it? Finally, let's talk Belle and Vinder, who almost cross paths. Thanks to Vinder's side, we now know that Swarm and Azure were capturing survivors to power up some kind of link to gain access to Division via the Doctor, or something psychic link or whatever. And Belle takes us back to Earth because a Lupari ship just fucks off because then Carvinista remote hyperspaces her ship back in its place. But why didn't he just remote pilot the ship that was leaving in the first place? That would have made more sense, but, we're going to get Belle in because plot convenience. Also, the part inside Passenger felt a little bit too nice. Personally, I'd have represented it as some kind of black void because you're inside some weird prison bloke, rather than being represented as some kind of, Greek mythological paradise with pillars and marble and blue skies and whatever. Anyway, for some reason I'm thinking that Belle and Vinder being super duper important isn't actually all that present anymore, or we'd have had more cryptic stuff going on between them. They're just star-crossed lovers caught in the pandemonium of the Flux, just trying to meet again. And that's kind of cute. And yeah, I don't want them to be the Doctor's biological parents, like, nah, none of that please. I want Ruth's Doctor to be between 2 and 3, and Tech Taeyoon's story of finding the Doctor to be utter bollocks, and simply use the native Gallifreyan for quote-unquote testing to further her agenda for the division, or something. Basically, as much as it's been reaffirmed in this episode, I still kind of want the Timeless Child stuff undoing somehow. I know I feel like I keep going back and forth on this, but I'm genuinely at this point where I think, do you know what? I want this done. Now I'm segueing back to the first chunk of stuff I talked about today. I really disliked how Tech Taeyoon's speech made everything we've come to know and love over the last 58 years of television feel but a speck of the character and lore we thought we knew. Seemingly downplaying everything we've seen and loved over the last nearly 6 decades for the sake of, well, umbraging Doctor Who. But in almost contrast to everything I've said today, this episode did exactly what it was supposed to do, and that was set up the finale. We found ourselves at the end of Chapter 4 with a bunch of stuff just sort of all over the place, and it felt like this week lined things up neat enough like bowling pins, and all Chibnall has to do next week is roll the ball right down the middle and just knock over all the pins. That will at least result in a series that'll be good by Chibnall standards. Maybe not by overall NuWho standards. That is a ranking video that I'm sure I will get to at some point. So, save the Earth from the invading Santarans and thanks to the Next Time trailer, Daleks and Cybermen, defeat Swarm and Azure, have Belle and Vinder meet again, reverse the Flux, and have the Doctor decide whether she wants those memories back. 5 pins. No split, no rubbish, just 5 pins. Okay? It's a lot to ask, absolutely, especially in the space of 1 episode, but I think the wider things, maybe not so much the Flux and Swarm and Azure, but the Doctor's past and division, they're things that probably won't be solved next week. I think we'll get everything else sorted out and the division stuff will continue into our 3 specials, one of which is on New Year's Day. Hopefully they will cover and tie up the big things of the Chibnall era. Then we'll get Russell back and we can just breathe. It was exposition heavy and yes, there were quite a few holes, but as said, it did what it needed to do and it's got me excited for the Vanquishers next week. And it wasn't complete dog do. Okay? So this week is going on par with Chapter 1 and getting a 6.5. This week, along with the rest of the series, has been massively polarizing just across the board, but this week I feel for some reason it very much is the case. I've gone for 6.5 because it matches episode 1. I wouldn't say it's better, I wouldn't say it's worse, but me personally, I'm still kind of in this bang in the center. I can't really decide. I was going to score it at 5, but Amy made a good point and said that, you know, it wasn't as bad as Chapter 1 and that got 6.5, so yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe when I get to the end of the series and we look at the series as a whole, maybe I could re-rank them once we know exactly what happened and how relevant stuff was in retrospect. Maybe that ranking would change. That rating, I should say, would change, but we'll get to that eventually. 6.5 this week. Also, finally, thank you to everyone on Twitter who pointed out the fact that the Doctor didn't Sonic shit this week. We did it, nerds. We made our voices heard. Fuck it. 10 out of 10. It's great. It's done. But of course, I want to know what you thought of Survivors of the Flux this week. Let me know of your scores out of 10 and your thoughts in the comments section below. Always do like reading that. And if you haven't already, please do hit subscribe to this channel for more Doctor Who content coming your way. We've got episode 6 still to come, then a series 13 review as a whole, do some wishlist stuff for the specials, wishlist stuff for Russell, and some editorial pieces that I'm quite excited to start writing, but we'll get to those once I've got Flux out of the way. And if you're wanting even more Doctor Who from me and the aforementioned love of my life, Amy, then why not check out the Escaping Castebarus podcast, where we rewatch, reminisce and review everything Doctor Who from 2005 to present. We've just released the Shakespeare Code. Lots of sexy people in 1599. Damn. But that is it from me this week. Thank you all so much for watching, and until I see you again, have a great week, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.